and welcome to the Peterborough podcast. My name's Kev Lawrence and I've been a radio presenter in Peterborough for around about 30 years.
And I'm John Baker and I've been a local journalist in Peterborough for not quite as long.
When I say I've been a radio presenter in Peterborough for 30 years, it makes me feel so old.
Well, I wasn't going to say it,
so
looking
ancient.
At you, sitting across from you.
With my grey hair.
At least you've got some.
Yes, I have some. So here we are for another episode of the Peterborough podcast, episode 12.
Baker's Dozen.
Baker's Dozen, yes. And of course, for each episode, for as long as it takes, we will chat about things going on in and around our city. It's not about holding people to account. We're just honest and relevant, and we're very positive about our city. And we've got a very busy podcast for today, have we not?
We have, yeah. Featuring some successes for some of our previous guests over the last few weeks and months. So that's quite exciting. News on Central Park and Pride and Armed Forces Day. We're also talking about shoplifting. We've got an exclusive on that for Peterborough City Centre and how it's being dealt with.
Look at the journalist in you, all excited about having an exclusive.
Yeah, it's nice. You know, it gets the blood flowing.
Shoplifting in Peterborough City Centre is definitely on people's agendas, so it is an important thing that we're going to talk about. We've got a special guest today who is the organiser of the Willow Festival. This is happening in July. The guy who's putting it all together is a guy called John Scriven, and he is our special guest. Where shall we start this week?
Well, let us start with Central Park. So we spoke to Dilraj Kaur a few years ago. What am I talking about? It's not that long. It's only 12 episodes. Crikey. A few weeks ago, and she's part of Peterborough Citizens. And their crime and safety team, led by St John Fisher, TDA, NPA, Peterborough College, GPUTC students, Neen Park Trust and Unison, alongside Friends of Central Park, have won a bid to place lighting in Central Park, covert CCTV cameras around Peterborough to make Peterborough safer. So that's a great achievement for them. Of course, Citizens hasn't been around that long. It's been around 3 years. Their mission to improve our community and give a voice to communities that maybe not heard. And they're young people, identified several projects, several strands to get involved with. They've done some great work in terms of mental health within schools with the help of MP Paul Bristow as well. And this is another great achievement. So
can I just come in? So ultimately, what have they achieved? What will the difference be in Central Park in terms of people's safety when they're walking around there?
It's one of the main things that was identified was at night, people don't feel safe. Throughout the day, fine, but at night, particularly on the periphery, if you like, of the park, sometimes it can feel a little bit unsafe. So this lighting, this stud lighting, I think it is, will brighten it up and hopefully give people a little bit more of an assurance. The CCTV cameras there, possibly the same thing. I know that there's been issues about where you install CCTV cameras in Central Park. Whether we should have more or less, because it's meant to be a sort of public area, so whether you should have cameras there anyway, and B, where you place them because of all the tree growth, because it grows throughout they grew throughout the year, obviously, and that blocks off the cameras and makes it tricky to establish the angles. Well, it looks like that's all been worked out and sorted out, and so hopefully very soon these installations will take place.
Okay, covert CCTV cameras, lighting in Central Park, a success for Peterborough Citizens.
Yes.
What's the next story we're going to celebrate in terms of previous guests who've had success?
Previous guests. Well, in our last show, we spoke to Teddy the Drag Queen concerning Pride, the Pride Parade and the festival. And it was great. Well, I went there last week. I was also covering Armed Forces Day as well. Another brilliant success. I think last weekend, also including charters in that as well, the city centre was as busy as I have seen it in years. Really good fun. The music worked really well for the brief period where the Pride Parade came through Cathedral Square while the Armed Forces Day celebrations were taking place. It worked really well. There were no issues, and everyone, we had the weather, which is always a help. Yeah, it was just absolutely a superb day. Also, the Warrington Carnival, I understand, went really well as well. And yeah, great. So Teddy and all the organisers of the Pride Committee in Peterborough should feel very proud, as should the committee for the Armed Forces Day as well.
Yeah, that was Saturday, June 24th, and like you mentioned, record numbers. Everyone who's ever been involved in putting Pride on, I know they're kind of building year on year, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Down the road, Cambridge have a massive Pride event, slightly earlier than the Peterborough event. But I think Peterborough's Pride is now very much starting to rival the size, the feel, the scope of Cambridge's Pride. So hats off to Teddy and all of the team who put that on. And as you mentioned, Armed Forces Day, a massive success. We had various guests on PCR on the Breakfast Show talking about that. And I wouldn't call it a concern, but I wondered what the general public's reaction would be to the events that they'd lined up. And by all accounts, nothing but positivity. It was awesome that loads of the Peterborough cadets from various services were kind of acknowledged and were very much part of the celebrations. And all of those singers, all of those performers, I saw a few video clips of it. Clearly they went down an absolute storm. So Pride, tick. Armed Forces Day, tick. Yeah, and it's nice to give a nod to the mega busy Warrington Festival. Not this year, I couldn't go this year, but the year before I went, it's packed. Warrington playing fields, you can't move for people. Like the whole of Warrington comes out for the carnival, the procession, and then all of the entertainment on the fields there. Absolutely fantastic. Were there any other previous guests that we needed to acknowledge?
There is, but we will save that one for part
save
two.
it one.
I'm going to save one. Yes,
two.
Save one regarding Peterborough bid. So
Okay.
we'll save that one for part two.
Let's give a little acknowledgement as well to Railworld Wildlife Haven. So they've recently celebrated two things actually: their 30th anniversary, and also the fact that they've just opened a new garden railway. I went and did the honours, John. I went and cut the ribbon. I was looking out for you. Where were you?
Where was I?
Where were you?
Hiding in one of the trees nearby, like a little Ewok.
Hiding in one of the trains.
I wasn't really. No, trees, I said.
Yeah, well, I've just sort of changed it to trains for you because of the train connection. If you've never been before to Railworld, I really urge you to go. I mean, when you just think about it, it's a few trains, and a garden, it just doesn't do it justice. The history behind this place, that 30 years ago was a coal face, a kind of abandoned mine. This wonderful gentleman bought the land, ended up giving it to Brian Pierce, MBE, who's really took it on. And with an army of volunteers, they've utterly transformed it. It really took me by surprise. I knew I'd quite enjoy looking at the miniature trains, the miniature railways. And I knew I'd kind of quite like the history of hearing a bit about New Valley Railway, which of course has its roots as part of this place. But when you actually cross that bridge and get into the wildlife part of it, the nature part of it, I mean, it's not massive, but it's fairly big, and you kind of walk around, and they've recycled so much old stuff, gifts from Peterborough City Council, gifts from various train operators. I mean, it was brilliant, and they've created spaces where you can just sort of go and just sit and hear the water trickling down the waterfall, and you're a stone's throw from the city centre, and yet you feel like you're in a forest, and it's calming. It's beautiful.
It's one of those.
It's a great place.
Yeah, it's one of those like almost hidden gems, isn't it? Because like you say, it's so close to the city centre. It's an easy walk away from the railway station. The army of volunteers that help out so regularly, and Brian is such a charismatic and likable person, and of course he always pays tribute to the Reverend Richard Payton, who is
Richard Payton bought the land originally, and he does very much.
The man who had the idea in the first place, and it's great to see 30 years, great achievement. They've had some ups and downs, obviously crime at times. They've always come back from that. Yeah, always managed to rebuild, and it's a lovely. And at this time of the year, it looks so lovely as well.
When nature is blooming. The other thing I guess to back up what we're saying, it's easy to big up a place that you like going to. Mm-hmm. TripAdvisor. Now, I haven't got the exact stats in front of me, but it's something like they are in the top 10% of worldwide attractions in terms of how great their reviews are, which just goes to show you when people go there and they can be bothered to jump onto TripAdvisor and write a review, Their reviews are astonishing. They also have a guest book, a visitor's book, that you can write a little comment or two in. And I think that's testament to how great the place is, the fact that their reviews are astonishing. You mentioned volunteers. Not only do they have a great little army of volunteers that do all of the work around it, but they also invite local businesses to come in and do like team building days where they maybe have a day out the office, get stuck into some work, and then they go back and they feel great. They're bonded as a team. And in fact, the day I went, there was about 10 people from BGL who'd all taken a day out the office because they can sort of sign up for a day out the office to go and do something in the community. And, you know, whether it's gardening, moving stuff about, you know, a little bit of labouring, any kind of job, and there's always loads of jobs there that needed to be done. As I say, I spoke to some of the BGL guys. I said, you know, how are you feeling about doing this? And they're like, we're loving it. No suit on, you know, gardening gear, on your hands and knees, whether it's, as I say, weeding or doing whatever. And all of the volunteers who were there from BGL on the day that I visited just said they loved doing it. So massive shout out to Brian Pearce and Bob, who's done a lot of work on this latest Garden Railway, to Kev Goodacre, who is their kind of publicity officer, and all of the team at Railworld. Keep being brilliant, and thank you for providing such an awesome place for visitors to go to.
Right, Kev, should we have a quick chat about the Great Eastern Run as well? The new training runs
Hang about.
Yep.
It's the beginning of July.
It is.
The Great Eastern Run isn't until October.
This is the time to start training, Kev. As an experienced award-winning athlete that you know I am, I know these things, of course. What they do is, and they've started doing these a few years ago, and now they're back, these great Get Fit for Great Eastern training evenings. So the first one is on 12th of July. They're held every other Wednesday at the Bushfield Sports Centre. And essentially what you do is you go there, 7 o'clock start, and you're split into groups. It can be for people who have signed up for the Great Eastern or people who are thinking of signing up for the Great Eastern Run. You do sort of a run, some around the track, some heading off, different distances, really to sort of start you off or continue your running, but also it's just a bit of a social event as well, so people jog along and meet new people as they're going round, and it's great. I went last year and spoke to the organiser of the run, Aaron, and he was very positive. Obviously the run took place back in October, returned after COVID, went pretty well overall. A few little teething problems, I think they'll be eliminated this year. And yeah, so 12th of July, these Get Fit for Great Eastern training runs, they are really good. They motivate you to be in a certain place at a certain time so that you run that evening. And I've done the Great Eastern Run 3 times, so I do know what it takes actually to get through it. And these sort of little sessions are really handy to do.
Are they fortnightly?
Fortnightly.
On Wednesdays?
Wednesday, so 12th of July, 26th of July, 9th of August, and so on, until I think it's the 4th of October is the last
How
one.
much?
Nothing.
FOC?
Yeah, nothing at all.
Free of charge training
Yeah. So, for instance, there are some people, when I went last year, one chap was training for a triathlon, I think it was, and hadn't actually signed up for the Great Eastern Run yet. So he was doing it as a sort of, it's not just about doing that run, which is great, and obviously tens of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds raised for various charities, but it's also about getting people fitter, getting Peterborough fitter, and that's what these evenings are about.
Your physical health is as important as your mental health, any kind of health. So yeah, anyone who's thinking of signing up for October's event, the half marathon through the nice flat streets of Peterborough, if you fancy considering these fortnightly training sessions to start your journey of getting nice and fit for the half marathon in October, then sign up. Where do people sign up for it, John?
You can go onto the Great Eastern Run website, which is greateastern.run. So that's quite an easy one to remember, isn't it?
Run. Okay, and I know that I'm sure as the weeks go by, we'll be talking more about the half marathon, about the Great Eastern Run, and Aaron and his team from Good Running Events are absolutely brilliant. So I'm sure that they'll be happy to see you sign up for the event as well. Greateastern.run.
And if he's listening, I mean, Aaron did promise that he would come on as a guest at some point.
Yeah,
so I'm going to grab hold of him at some point. We'll get him in the next few weeks.
Right. Our guest in a few minutes' time is the organiser of the Willow Festival, a massive event for music fans on Embankment. Of course, we all enjoyed Glastonbury recently. Who can forget Elton John's incredible show-stopping performance to finish off Glastonbury? So we'll get stuck into our guest, John Scriven, talk to him about what's going on. Get stuck into our guest, that sounds wrong. We will chat with our guest.
Sounds like it's a cake or something.
Yeah, exactly, about the Willow Festival. But you wanted to spend a few minutes talking about quite a serious issue affecting Peterborough City Centre, and that is the issue of shoplifting. So what would you like to share about that, John?
So it was recent statistics from April by the Office for National Statistics showed that in the past 12 months, shoplifting in Peterborough has increased by 54%. Now that is a huge amount. There are various circumstances that have been put forward by the police. They said they're working with businesses, seeking criminal behaviour orders against prolific individuals to stop them offending, etc., etc. So there's some circumstances, but what's also happened is that a shoplifting summit was held recently. Various members of organisations came to that, businesses across Peterborough, Peterborough Positive involved, Paul Bristow, the MP, was also there. And I spoke to Pep Cipriano on the phone yesterday to find out actually what happened. He's the manager of the BID, the Peterborough Business Improvement District, to find out what actually happened in that summit, which was held a few days ago as we're recording. And the exciting piece of news, I guess, from that is that Peterborough will have its own dedicated police officer who reports to PEP, so almost as a part of the BID. So this is something new for Peterborough. This gentleman, the officer, they have found this person, very local, knows the area, knows a lot of the faces of Peterborough people. He will report to the BID, and he will only cover the levy-paying area. That's about 400 businesses, very, very central.
I think it's really important, isn't it, that these kind of discussions are happening. This guy that's only going to cover the levy-paying area, these 400 businesses, I just wonder what kind of challenges he's going to find. I just wonder if he digs into it all, not just find out what challenges he can find, how big the problem is, and chatting to all of these shops that are victims, but what can they then do about it? What powers do they have to do about it? What resources, what time have they got to deal with it? How expensive is it to businesses? Shoplifting, presumably very, but dealing with the offenders, understanding the bigger picture, looking into why these people who are offending, and I mean it's a big talking point.
It is a big talking point. There's a number of things to say about that, and one is, as I've said, he's local. If he's concentrating on this particular thing, this aspect of crime, then he will gather a database. Peterborough BID has signed up for DISC, and I'm not sure whether you're aware of what that is or not. It's an online, basically, information sharing system that a lot of BIDs around the country use to help reduce low-level crime and antisocial behaviour. It's essentially, you get an app and it shares a lot of the information within the network about what's going on. Quite instant. You can view galleries of offenders literally online. You can submit reports of incidents online. So that's something that Peterborough has signed up for.
And that sounds quite a meaningful thing that might well make a difference.
Yeah, it does. And it's something new. And it's something new and innovative. And a lot of BIDs are doing it. In fact, a lot of BIDs also across the country have also signed up to get their own police officers. One thing I would say is that they'll obviously be they'll get to know local offenders, if you like, but a lot of people, that they're gangs that are operating across the country, that will be a real challenge. So presumably the various BIDs will share information across the country as well.
I can't help thinking, with regards to shoplifting, that with so much CCTV, covert CCTV, you'd have thought that in itself would really see levels of shoplifting decreasing, but that's not the case.
Well, it's 50% up, and it's a real challenge, isn't it? It's
every shop has CCTV.
Yeah, you'd think so, but does every shop have the resources to be constantly monitoring CCTV when there's hundreds, thousands of people coming into, say, Queensgate every day? Well, they don't, do they? And my wife was a victim of shoplifting the other day. She had a mobile phone stolen in Queensgate.
That's not shoplifting. That's just
or
crime.
theft.
That's just
Then.
theft from her.
Yeah,
person.
yeah. Sorry, I should have said theft. Really, it's just they had an opportunity. I believe they're going through I believe they've been caught already. The court system. I don't know too much about that, so I can't say it was a duo who allegedly did it. So it does happen. It's very disappointing, and as you say, they do have CCTV, but that's that constant monitoring of it, isn't it? And it's a shame. There are areas that we know that where there is antisocial behaviour as well in the city centre, and I didn't realise that it's been called this, but apparently there's a part of the area city centre known as the Francomanca bench. The bench outside Francomanca, a lot of people are there late at night doing antisocial things, and I didn't know that was so. The people who run Francomanca will definitely be talking to this police officer once he's employed very early on to try and see if anything can be done about that. I mean, I've been through Cathedral Square late at night when it's starting to die down a bit, sort of 10, 11 o'clock, and you do see, certain things going on there. So that's another aspect of it as well. I mean, Pep himself, when I spoke to him, he said, shying away from his role in bid, he said as a taxpayer, he's delighted that this is happening, that this officer is coming in. And some of the work that the bid have been doing, for example, you might have noticed on Cowgate, a lot of the graffiti has been disappearing, and that's because it's constantly being repainted over, and now they've just stopped doing it. The offenders seem to have just stopped doing it. So that's something.
Warn them down,
and they've got. I mean, the problem is that obviously they might have dispersed and gone to elsewhere to just do the graffiti elsewhere, but it is a step in the right direction. So that's my little bit of news. Let's hope that it has the effect. Let's hope that it reduces theft, shoplifting, and other antisocial behaviour. We still have cyclists bombing along Bridge Street when they shouldn't be. I nearly got hit by one the other day. Gave him a stern word. I won't say what that word was. And
things always happen to you, John.
Oh yes,
things
I'm a magnet. I know. They pick on the little ones, Kev. That's what it is. It's bullying. I don't think it is that. I think it's just that. I think it's maybe because I'm quite. I don't know. I remember things and I report them to people.
Your eyes are open to the world around you. There's nothing you don't notice. It's the journalist inside you. But no, I'm very interested to hear all about this, and certainly, I don't know. I don't own a business in the city centre, but if I did, and the stock that I was trying to sell to make a living, to pay my bills, kept getting stolen by criminals who choose to come and steal stuff without paying for it. I mean, I can't imagine how awful that would be, particularly for a small business who are struggling. So, to have this officer incoming that you mentioned that's going to be, dedicated to try and help eradicate the problem, we're going to follow that with interest. And let's hope that they get the right resource, they get the right powers to deal with it, and they're the right person in the role so that they can make a difference and hopefully see these shoplifting stats decrease rather than increase.
Yeah, well, that's got to be the aim, hasn't it? That's got to be the whole point of it, and it's got to, a byproduct of that will be that hopefully it brings more people to do their shopping in Queensgate, Cathedral Square, etc., the city centre, because you look on social media and you always get comments about Peterborough, or some people don't feel safe, and you see certain types of people lingering around. I mean, I didn't tell you what another thing that happened to me the other day.
What's that?
Very briefly, somebody threw a can of beer at me. I was just walking along Broadway, and somebody sitting on the steps at the new theatre just chucked a can of beer half full at me, and I picked it up and put it in the dustbin, and again I addressed him quite politely. It wasn't polite, and moved on in my way. This is the sort of thing that people remember, and that's the sort of thing that we want stamped out in the city centre.